In this video, we're going to be looking at the basics of trigonometric ratios. So the ratios first begin with a right angled triangle. And it must always be a right angled triangle for all the examples in this video. And I'm just going to label a random angle inside of this triangle as theta. Think of theta as like x, where x is some unknown variable. Theta here means your unknown angle. We're just going to give it that title. The sides of this right angle triangle are associated with a name in relation to this angle. We have the side that is opposite to theta, that is conveniently called your opposite side. We have the side that is adjacent to theta, which is the adjacent side, conveniently. But you may be asking, aren't both these sides adjacent? It's adjacent to the angle theta, is it not? Well, the final side here is opposite to the 90 degrees. The side always opposite to 90 degrees, which is conveniently also the longest side of the triangle, is called your hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. So these are your three sides of a right angle triangle, and we have three ratios that we can use to define the angle of theta in relation to the sides. In other words, we get an equation that relates the sides with the angle. The first one is the sine of an angle. The sine of angle theta is equal to the opposite side divided by the hypotenuse. The cosine or cos of any angle is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And lastly, the tangent of some angle is equal to the opposite side divided by the adjacent side. Okay, and these are your three ratios. And if you're having trouble memorizing them, just remember this one acronym. SOH CAH TOA. SOH CAH TOA describes these three ratios in unison. And let me explain how this works. SOH means that the sine of any angle is equal to the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. That's why it's SOH. Okay, SOH is sine equals to opposite over hypotenuse. CAH, the cos of an angle, is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and the tangent, or just tan, is the opposite over the adjacent. SOH CAH TOA. This is our first question. Our first question is a right angle triangle, which describes that we have an interior angle that's 25 degrees and two sides that are labeled 5 and x. And our goal is to work out what is the side length of x. Well, to work out x, let's first determine which ratio describes these two sides and the angle. So if we were to have this angle here and give a name to the three sides, we would say that the side opposite the 25 is given the title of opposite. The side that is opposite the 90 degrees, which is also the largest side, is your hypotenuse. And that means the remaining side must be your adjacent. So we have the hypotenuse, the adjacent, and the angle. So using SOH CAH TOA, which ratio can we use? Can we use sine, cos, or tan? If you said cos, you would be correct. So in this case, we can say that the cos of 25 degrees is equal to the it's equal to the adjacent, which in this case is x, divided by 5. So now our goal is to just work out the value of x. To work out x, we can times both sides by 5. And what we end up with is x equals to 5 times the sine of 25 degrees. And if we want to work this out, we can simply just type it into our calculator. And what we end up getting is this is the same as 2.11. So the value of x is 2.11. Let's look at another example. Another example that we have is a triangle that looks like this. The goal again is to work out the value of x. Pause the video and give it a go first. Okay, so for this one here, we can recognize that the opposite side of 25 degrees is your opposite, the opposite of 90 degrees is your hypotenuse, and the final side is the adjacent. So now we recognize we have both the opposite, the hypotenuse, and the angle. Which ratio is that? If you said sine, you would be correct. So in this one, we would say that the sine of 25 degrees is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse, which is x over 6. To work out what x is, we can times both sides by 6 to get that x is equal to 6 times the sine of 25 degrees. And this is, if we just put it into our calculator, we can work out that it's the same as 2.54. And that is the value of x in this question here. Let's keep going. What happens if we have a triangle that looks like this? It's a right angle triangle still. We have this angle here is 20 degrees, this is 10, and this is x. Our goal is to work out the value of x. Well, for this one here, let's work out what we have. We have that this side here is the opposite. The side opposite the 90 degrees is the hypotenuse. And the missing side is the adjacent. So what we have is both the opposite, the hypotenuse, and the angle. So this would be the sine of 20 degrees. The sine of 20 degrees is equal to x divided by 10. And that would mean that x is equal to 10 times the sine of 20 degrees. So if we were to put this into our calculator to work out what this answer is, we would get that the answer is 3.42. And that is the answer to this question here. The next question we have is this one here. So still a right angle triangle, I just drew it a bit funny. This is 7, this is x, and this angle here is 70. How would you work this one out? Well, to work it out, we have the same steps again. Identify what are the sides called. This side with x is called your opposite. The side opposite the 90 degrees is called your hypotenuse. And the final side is your adjacent side. So to work this out, we have the opposite, hypotenuse, and the angle. That would be sine once again. So the sine of 70 degrees is equal to x divided by 7. And this would be the same, to solve for x, is the same as 7 times the sine of 70 degrees. So now to work out what is x, we can just put it into our calculator. And to work this out, it is just the same as 6.58. Let's work on something that's a little bit harder. Okay, so we've done examples that are very commonly straightforward so far. Let's say we have a question like this. 65 degrees, this is x, and this is 5. How would you work out something like this? Well, we have, if we do the same steps as before, the opposite side. We have the angle opposite the 90 degrees, which is hypotenuse. And we have your adjacent side. To work out what ratio we use here, we can recognize that we have opposite and adjacent, and that would be TOA, that would be tan. So we would have that the tan of 65 degrees is equal to the opposite, which is 5, divided by your adjacent, which is x. To work this out, we can times both sides by x. Okay, so what we'll end up with is x times the tan of 65 equals to 5. And then we can divide both sides by the tan of 65. By the tan of 65, and that'll get us with x equals to 5 divided by the tan of 65 degrees. And once again, you can just work out what this is by plugging it into your calculator. It is a little bit trickier because we have the denominator missing in this one, but the overall math still works out to be the same. So the answer here is simply 2.33. That is how you work out the value of x in this question. Let's keep it going. What about this one here? Okay, right angle triangle. We have that this one here is 40 degrees. We have this side is 5 and this side is x. What ratio is it? Well, we have this is opposite. The angle opposite, or the side opposite the 90 degrees is your hypotenuse. And you have the final side is your adjacent. So in this case, we have a ratio that's relating both the adjacent and the hypotenuse. That would be the cos of 40 degrees. the cos of 40 degrees is simply equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So that would be 5 divided by x. To work this out, a quick trick you can do is you can simply just swap x and cos 40. Okay, it's the same steps we did in the previous question. In the previous question, what we did was we times both sides by x. So we got x here, and then the x disappeared from here. And then we just divided both sides by tan 65. Okay, and then we ended up getting x is equal to this. An easier way to do it is just to swap x and tan 65. So if we swap them both, we got that x is swapped with tan 65, x is swapped with tan 65. So we can do the same thing here. We can just say that x is the same thing as 5 divided by the cos of 40 degrees. Okay, and again, it's a little bit more difficult doing it the traditional way because on the denominator was what we were missing. But the final answer to this is simply just 6.53. And that is how you work out missing sides using SOH CAH TOA, using basic trigonometry.